Good morning, good evening, good night, NBN, Entrepreneurship and Leadership.
Personally, I'm fascinated by the story.
Trust is an underrated weapon in the business landscape.
I'm a really strong believer in learning by doing.
What's the definition of success?
I'm trying to come up with an answer to the question. But go ahead, Richard.
You could be right, but you're wrong. Good morning, good evening, good night, Entrepreneurship and Leadership channel listeners on the New Books Network. I'm here today with my co-host Keeman, and our guest today is Andrew Smart, who's joining us from Bangkok. Andrew's the co-founder of Slator, and rather than me try to introduce him, Andrew, would you like to introduce yourself the way you would to a random stranger you meet at a party or a business networking event?
Well, if it was a random stranger at a party, I'd just probably say, hi, my name is Andrew, and then see where the conversation goes. If it was at, say an industry conference, I'd probably say, I'm a commercial director at Slator. We're a business news, research, and advisory organization to the global language services and technology industry. And so we just try to help people build their businesses.
And I would say, Andrew, you sound like an American, but you live in Bangkok. How did that happen?
Well, I am an American. I've lived in Asia for every year from 1993 until the present, except for 2 years in New York City. I first moved out to Singapore in 93 to work in the stock market as an analyst. So my background's actually in finance and in investments. I covered a wide range of sectors and helped a couple of companies go on IPO. And then I moved on to the dealing desk before there was an Asian financial crisis.
So who did you send? So you're working for a big company. Somebody sent you out there. Who were you working for at the time?
No, actually, I got the job myself. So I finished my MBA at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. I was looking around and I actually wanted to work on Wall Street. But the U.S. was still kind of coming out of its 1980s, late 80s recession, early 90s. So I started looking around the world and I wanted to look for growth markets. And Hong Kong and Singapore were booming at the time, and there was a lot of discussion about the Asian tigers. So I literally took the Singapore phone book, started writing letters because,
But sorry, you went to Singapore. You obviously didn't have the Singapore phone book in the U.S. You flew. You said I'm going to Singapore.
Well, it was actually Singapore, and they actually created these economic development board offices in places like Washington, D.C. and Boston and around the world. So they did a roadshow at our university while I was finishing up my MBA, and I thought, well, this is interesting. Since I'm originally from Hawaii, I thought maybe move out to the Pacific, and I started doing more and more investigation on Singapore. And it was a high growth market. It was the Asian century, as they would say. And so I took their phone book and I started writing every bank and stockbroker in town, and wrote about 110 letters to different people and told them I was just going to be there. And I got a courier ticket, flew out on a plane, was in the YMCA for 2 weeks, making phone calls from a payphone. And I got my first job with the Development Bank of Singapore security.
Okay, I have to, but Richard, I know you want to say something, but you have no idea how similar this is to my story. It's like mind-boggling. No, seriously, I left after university. So I graduated in 92. I'm not sure when, but I moved out. And so I got just an English teaching job, but I spotted Eastern Europe basically as the place to do stuff. But anyway, long story short, I got to Krakow in 93 and I got the list. I did it a little differently than you. I went to the American consulate and I got the list of all the American companies in Krakow. And I would literally go down the list and call every single company to see what I could do. But it's just so funny that sounds like the exact, almost like the exact same.
And just to add a little bit of repetitive action, when I was organizing some event in New York with a New Yorker, a nonprofit, we divided the membership list and were manually copy pasting. Hey, hi, this is Richard. Hi, this is Jordan. So basically, for anyone listening, there's an entrepreneurial lesson here. If you want to get someone in life, you're going to send a lot of emails and letters that people are not going to reply to, and every now and again someone will reply, and that might be your thing. But I wanted to say, obviously your first step was getting a job. But you went to business school, did you always have the idea you're going to be have your own business one day, or would your parents be quite surprised to discover that you now are a company owner, Andrew?
Probably. It was not the original plan. My original plan was to get involved in the capital markets. and to work as an equity analyst and then as a dealer. And after working at DBS for a couple of years, about 3 years, I moved on to UBS Securities, and I was on the dealing desk. And it was all ready for prime time until one of these global black swan events happens, and there's an Asian financial crisis, and about 75% of the industry finds itself unemployable in a matter of like days, if not weeks.
When was this? Which?
This was 1997 when Thailand started valuing its currency, and there had been all this debt across Southeast Asia, and there was an Asian financial crisis that shocked the stock markets here. So your first lesson to all of your viewers is, if you want to go get a job or do anything in business development, it doesn't matter whether you have to write a letter, write an email, make a phone call. You just target who you can, and it's a bit of a numbers game, and you will succeed if you put sweat into it. The second thing is, no matter how great you think your plan is, the world can blow it up, and you have to find a way to make a living again. So all of a sudden, I'm out in Asia, doing the job I always wanted to do. And of course, it's not there anymore. And you have to think, well, do I go back to the US and try and get that job, or what do I do? And by the grace of God, some British friends I know put some punting money into a British web design firm, and they wanted to open up their first office in the US, in New York City. So I had to decide, do I completely abandon my career and go to New York City and get involved in this infant industry that people are talking about, with the internet and web design, and try to make a career out of it. And at the end of the day, I realized there were odds here. There was significant risk in getting involved in a startup, getting involved in opening up a new office for them, and going to New York City and pitching something at an early stage industry cycle. But I also realized that New York is full of potential prospects and clients. And if you can't, it's not as hard actually as people think. It really is a numbers game. You just have to get out there and start contacting people and, speaking with them intelligently, and, make it work. And we did. And so we were able to get traction in 1998 and 99 in New York City. And then I returned to Singapore to open up the third office in 2000. And then a couple of years later, we sold.
So what was this? So sorry, let's just understand this business a little bit better. So what was this business like? So this was like early internet. Obviously, this is 90. You said 98. So this is very early internet days. And what was this? It was like an agency? You said it was an agency?
It was a classic web design agency before ad agencies had the capability to understand, the basic technological elements. In some ways,
you want to have a website. If you want to create your business website, that's what we do. We create business websites.
Yes. And this was a job, or you were a co-founder of this?
No, I joined. It was founded in 1995 by a genuine entrepreneur, a guy who had that long-term vision, and I realized that you also needed people to help make it a realization. So, he was a great guy who could go into business meetings, articulate what's going to happen, and actually lean on people at the right moment and close. So I also learned, quite a number of things in practical sales from watching this guy close. And really, it was just about problem solving. There was a lot of uncertainty about what this could mean. Right. How do you use these tools and this technology? To be honest, a lot of the same sort of soul searching that's happening in the language industry that we cover now, right? I mean, people have just been through this 5-7 year cycle with machine translation and other technologies. Yeah. So at the end of the day, you're just trying to take the technology that's available and figure out how to apply it. So I was more of a business development guy. I would be the account director. I would manage things. I'd get it to a pre-sales consultant level, and then I have to bring in somebody with a little deeper technical knowledge than me. We'd iron it out. We put in the product. So basically, I was doing IT, enterprise IT light, if you will.
Yeah.
Which is a completely different
sales, but hold on. You were doing it in New York as well. So that's like hardcore. I mean, whatever. I was born in New York. I grew up in New Jersey, and I got all my friends are from like that, like New York sales guys actually, and that's hard. That's not an easy, that's definitely a school of, what's the right expression? School of fire or whatever, school by whatever you really had to learn in a tough environment. So I'm sure that was valuable for you.
It's trial by fire, but I was fortunate in the sense that, by going from, I'm an analyst by nature. I was not a natural born salesman or anything like that. I had to learn these skills when I went onto the dealing desk. I had to completely learn how to be short and concise, and because I'm usually verbose. And then so when you go to New York, you don't have a lot of time. No. You make cold calls like, hey, I want to help you. And, they say yes or no. The great thing about New York is they don't waste your time. It's like, I'm not interested.
Some people think it's rude, but it's just like, no, I don't got time.
I got the rudest business communication I ever got from a podcaster in New York, but that's a separate story. But I just want to, when you said the game plan was to go into equity sales, when you were like a little boy, like 10, 12, 15, before you were like thinking about career.
Sorry, and Richard, by the way, in Hawaii.
Okay, when you were a little boy in Hawaii, you said the game plan was equity sales. Was that we like financially motivated? You just say, "Hey, Wall Street, that's where the money is. I want to have a good lifestyle. I want to make some money." Or was just like, we don't have to go too into the psychology of it, but it's like, well, we're always curious, where did it come from, and what were you going to be when you were little in Hawaii?
Well, I'm happy to explain how it sort of manifested. I was born in Hawaii, which is a multicultural society, and I took all of that for granted. And then my parents moved to Ohio, where they were originally from, when I was in high school, and I finished high school in Ohio. And it was a big culture shock. Everyone looked like me, but it was a Midwest culture shock for me. But it also made me realize at that time, I liked international business. I liked learning about different cultures and people. And so I started looking around for university programs at the time. My grandfather was also a banker, and he started as a banker back when, before there was a Federal Reserve, before the Great Depression. And he used to talk about business, and he used to share these stories about, you're only as good as your word. And, I have a banknote with his name on it as the treasurer of the bank. And, when you talk about putting your name on something and having it mean and have any value, these are the lessons he taught me. And I always thought banking was fascinating. And then I realized that actually I really wanted to get a little bit more aggressive in sort of like capital deployment. And I started looking more and more at finance. And I thought, this is fascinating. This is great. You got a lot of really smart people. They've got incredible ideas. They're looking for capital. They're trying to build things. They're trying to build teams out. They're trying to, of course, make money. And it's really about as competitive as it gets. And the other exciting thing, it's a horse race that never ends. So, you may have a bad quarter, things may be going wrong, but you look at companies like IBM that reinvent themselves over and over and over again, or Microsoft, which was, kind of going down, and now is again a juggernaut, right?
Right.
So it's just really interesting for me on a personal level to watch and learn from these people. And I try to turn that into a career by thinking, well, what kind of analysis can you do, and where do you place your bets?
So I think you're the first person I've ever met and I've met a lot of people who actually went into banking and finance because it was an exciting window on the world, and it was like a competitive environment. And that's really great, because a lot of people, they just do jobs because that's what other people expect of them. But it sounds like you were pretty intentional and focused back then.
Yeah, and to quote a guy from New York, nothing says I love you like cold hard cash. But so people vote with their dollars, right? But at the end of the day, good ideas do win. I mean, there's always some hype, there's always some over enthusiasm, there's always these market blowouts. But at the end of the day, it was a great experience, because I got to see how different people run their businesses without having to actually make the initial risk myself, making and recommending companies. And it gave me the courage that when this crisis happened, to maybe jump in with a bunch of guys who seemed to know what they were doing, and see if I could contribite and turn that into something worthwhile.
But your education, education-wise, I'm thinking, sorry to interrupt, but the education that you, first of all, you got the MBA, but then you also had this, then you did this analyst education, and then you did the sales education. You were just getting this world-class education. Preparing, you didn't realize what you were preparing yourself for, maybe. But
well, I probably still have a few bruises beneath the skin from talking to some very senior fund managers who are like, who the hell is the guy calling me, man? He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
There are a couple of lessons to write. One is that it's really interesting. You were aware in this high school in Ohio that you looked like everyone else, but you were different. That it's very important, to realize that you need to ask a few questions to get under the skin of someone. And the fact you had this Hawaiian background would have not been apparent until someone chatted to you. And also the fact that you took control of your life. you had this sort of regular American, what looked like a regular American life, but you knew you wanted to go international. And for anyone listening here, you could be at any country in the world just listening to Andrew's story and saying, well, maybe I should go to Peru, or maybe I should go to Asia, or help rebuild Ukraine when the war's over. There's all these different opportunities available if you just see widely enough that it was in your hands. You just took that initiative. So you flipped back to New York, right? And then what happened?
Well, I was in New York and we were making it work. And we set up our offices on Broad Street, right across from the New York Stock Exchange. And we were having drinks at the top of the World Trade Center.
Windows of the world. I've been there.
Yes, indeed. And we opened our bank account in the Chase in the basement there, the Chase Bank in the basement. And, it was going well. And so they asked me to, if I would go back out to Singapore and open up the Singapore office. So I did. And then while I was there, of course, September 11th happened. And it was very surreal watching this on TV and thinking about all the people you knew that were directly impacted. It was really awful, to be honest. And so that said, we had to make some hard decisions with the business, and it needed additional capital. So ultimately, again, a black swan event came in and this time harmed this business, and it was almost a fatal flaw. So Maersk Data, who had put some money in, took over the business and then made it part of their larger offering. So they were a great company to work for. So now I was getting my third education in what it's like to work for a very large Danish IT company.
Oh, wow.
And, guys that anything $5 million or under, they just write off at the moment of purchase, because that's not even what a propeller on a ship costs, So, we're living in this world where I'm doing $30,000, $50,000 contracts, and these guys are like, 5 million is a rounding error.
Did you say Maersk as in the shipping line? Did you say
yes.
Maersk?
So Maersk Sealand has had an IT arm to service all of its businesses. And Maersk Data was the IT arm.
Maersk are famous for being hacked, and I can't say too much details because it was in the media, but one of my daughters works in IT security, and Maersk is one of the biggest sort of logistics hacks where they're taken down by, this was a few years ago now, but their entire operations were brought to a halt for several days or weeks. And so maybe it was your fault if you were in Maersk.
I'm not sure about that. The web design from the early 2000s was the fatal flaw in the...
Well, it was a JavaScript bug, but we were involved in that at a time when you literally had to hand code every page for every different browser type. It was a nightmare. Right. So as technology advances and as tools become more and more, ubiquitous and easy to use, I would say that, not jumping forward too fast, but Slator today is a beneficiary of generations of tools like, now WordPress and guys like Stripe coming in to facilitate e-commerce and all kinds of SaaS products that wouldn't really make it possible for us to be a startup. So I know I'm jumping ahead, but I just wanted to highlight that as much as things may have been tough in the early days, and then you get sucked into these big corporations, you can never stop learning. And I also got a lot of practical management lessons from the guys at Maersk. So I had a great boss. He was running the region in Asia out of Japan. Maersk is almost like the embassy of the Danish government when you think about all the trade and everything that they run. And they had a massive office right next to the Imperial Palace, and you walk in here and you're looking, and I just love the little details of things. So I walk into this office and I'm looking at the power structure, so that when a Japanese, government official walks in, and how he sees this office of the managing director that's larger than most people's houses, right? Mm. And it's got all these different areas, and you can see out the back window there's the Imperial Palace.
Oh my goodness!
And you're just seeing the dynamics.
So you're in Japan. Sorry, I got a little confused. So you went back. So you went back to Singapore.
Yes.
I thought you went. And then 9/11 happened, and then Maersk took
so I was
over.
still based in Singapore, but now I was helping them around the region,
and
they wanted me to visit the head office. So I'm sorry about that. I didn't make that clear.
Yeah.
But again, for me, when I travel and for all these businesses, it's these little subtleties and the color commentary that I find so fascinating.
Totally.
So here you are going into a Danish company that's operating in Japan, and you've got these power structures because the Japanese are a major trading power, and this is a major shipping company. You're thinking, what am I doing here?
You need a website?
Yeah.
You need a website, yeah.
Yeah. So yes, and for those who don't know, Maersk is one of the world's, if not the world's biggest shipping company. It's one of the top shipping companies in the world. So if someone's going to block the Suez Canal, it might be Maersk, but it wasn't. And so, how long did you last there, and what caused you to move on from Maersk?
Well, we sold the business into Maersk, and I was there to integrate it. And after a year and a half or so, I was thinking, okay, I'm not really an enterprise IT guy in the world of shipping. It's not really where I thought I'd want to be. But it was a great experience working there. I want to take a slight detour since you talked about managing people and leadership. So the boss that I had there at the time, I saw two things at Maersk. One was they hire so many people in such volume that they were doing psychometric testing and other things that I wouldn't normally agree with a small company, because in a small company you have to try and get to know people and you have to have more of a feel to it. But they would kind of put people into these cubby holes, and they lived and died by it, and it was kind of brutal in a way. But the other aspect was when they let people go, when they did their reviews, and if somebody wasn't really quite working out, they're actually pretty humane about it. So one of the lessons that I learned is, nobody should ever not see it not working out, or that the firing is coming. And you have conversations with them. You can have normal conversations with them. And quite frankly, if their contract says you need to pay them out $1, pay them $1.10 and make it easy to just for them to say yes, and everyone walk away on good terms. Being bogged down in commercial disputes doesn't benefit anyone, doesn't benefit your management time, wastes a lot of time and money, and builds a lot of ill will in the marketplace.
I think there is a really important lesson there. A lot of smaller entrepreneurs are rather arrogant about big companies and say, oh, we've got a cool small company culture. But if you work in a big company, the reason they're big is because they're good at something. They wouldn't become a big company if they hadn't been good. And like learning how to manage people, learning how to organize things. There's a lot of, you can't be a company that big unless you're well organized, because otherwise you'll get killed by your costs. So you learned a bit about how to run things at Maersk.
Yeah, I think I just comment to that as well. Actually, I do think that is a very important thing, and that's a big flaw with small companies, is people take things personally, and you actually just address the actual, like, I totally buy into this, and and for whatever reason, I was lucky enough to not get sucked down the path of being like, oh my God, you don't like my company and you're leaving, or leaving is one thing, or you have to say goodbye to somebody, and I totally agree. You should always, even if you were the one saying goodbye, you need to do that on like going with the positive way is always better, because there's they're angry, like people are angry, like how could you do this, or like you didn't perform the way. But you know what? A failure is always two-sided in these things. It's not just the company is right and the employee is wrong, or vice versa. And so I think that's a huge lesson that you just actually mentioned, that particularly for younger people that just don't. It's always better to end things on good terms. Basically, you never know what's going to happen. Your enemy now could be your friend tomorrow. Your friend today can be your enemy tomorrow.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And on top of that, I mean, I remember the first time I had to fire someone. I think I was 23 in my first business here in Poland, and I literally had a sleepless night because I just didn't know how to do it. And it's like very often when you're starting a business, you imagine the good stuff, you imagine, the success, the nice things. And in fact, if you're going to go down that road, there's tough stuff, and it's not fun to fire people. And you can do it with class. You have to give people a chance, give them a chance, doing it properly. And so you're going into the weeds of like the entrepreneurial journey. You have to get good at the nasty stuff, and being good at the nasty stuff is actually probably more important than being good at the easy stuff, because it's easier to be good at the nice stuff, I guess.
Well, I wouldn't call it nasty. I would just call it firm and professional. I mean, and I would highlight that. I think whether you're a small company or a big company, when you talk to staff, and you have your annual reviews and maybe a mid-year discussion, really you should be talking about also what this person really wants, also out of their career and out of their life. And you realize that, unfortunately in this day and age, sometimes the only way for people to make significant salary gains is to actually leave your company. So I sometimes often wonder if, you have people for, if you're lucky, 3 or 4 or 5 years, and people talk about, the generation today even being on a shorter cycle. So, I'd probably flip this over to Kimon, because it's like, as you go from, 4 people to 40 people to 400 people, the structure and the same people you have in certain leadership roles when you're a small company, they're not always capable to be the guy at the much larger company. And there's nothing wrong with them. They haven't done anything wrong, but how do you manage that where you bring in
somebody? a big challenge, especially if you're growing fast. It's really, it's one of the, you hit the nail on the head of one of the, that particular thing is actually very complicated. But like, I would take away the conversations. Like, I guess for whatever reason, we've always been focused on, I personally always am interested in, I'm just interested in people, and I'm just interested in what do you want to do. And so, what happens, Andrew, actually, in that case is people get repurposed. Like, as long as, okay, let's start with this. I believe in something called the bank account of goodwill. So if you're good to people over time, you're making deposits in this bank account of goodwill. Now, let's say a change moment happens or things need to change. If you've treated people well and there is an opportunity for them to do something different and they really want to do, that's actually the way we solve that problem. People get moved around within the organization into different slots, new initiatives, new exciting things that they want to do. But the thing is, you need to get that alignment that this is something that we need, and it's important, and this is something you want to do. And when you get that, that's like the goal. But that allows you to, and as long as your intentions are always good and you've always been good, but that's why it sort of goes back to how do you treat people? Like, you have to have a track record of treating people well to be able to more easily, it's never easy, but to more easily move in that sort of area.
And if you do hire people who take things for granted, you treat them well, and they just suck it up. You screwed up because you hired the wrong type of people as well. If things go wrong, you have to look in the mirror and take responsibility. And it seems to me from the way you've described yourself, you weren't the kind of person who took your life for granted. You had quite, despite your I guess supportive family and your good high school and your university, you had to deal with quite disruptive major events. And you could have easily blamed the world and said, it's not my fault the 9/11 happened. It's not my fault the financial crisis, and started getting angry and resentful. But somehow you just like bounced back, right?
Well, and we've just been through that with COVID, so I mean, if anyone were ever to tell you that international travel and business meetings, would shut down. And so here we were at Slator, and we're a young company, and we're finally getting some advertising and some research, and about a third of our revenue on a small scale was events at the time, and literally like that's gone. What do we do? And there was a moment where I think everyone in the world was probably thinking in like April and May, like, okay, and am I going to be able to stay in business here? Or what does this mean? What do I have to do to survive? And I think, thankfully, once people realized by the third quarter, like the world hadn't come to an end, and that, they started to feel their way out of it.
Yeah.
And, people had to make some adjustments, and we did online events that ironically were more profitable than our in-person events. So, go figure. And so now we're looking at the return of in-person events, kind of going, well, do we want to go back or not? Yet the market is there. So how can you say no? So you get these curveballs all the time. I would say, anyone that's listening, if you live to be 50 or 60 years old, the world's probably going to blow up on you every 7 years, And it's going to be something you never would have ever figured out in a million years,
I'm a bit worried you're saying if you live to be 50 or 60 years, a significant number of our listeners are not going to live that long. And I assume it's going to happen on the way there as well. But I don't know whether, if you can, like, maybe you've been talking about Slator from time to time, but do you want to take us through how you what's the origin story of Slator? How did that come into being?
I just like to get the jump, because I think I think there's a key moment between now and Slator that also contributes to your to what you end up knowing how to do that helps you get involved in Slator, if I recall.
Yeah. So you were asking about, leaving Maersk Data, and so, I resigned, and, I was living in Singapore, and I was thinking, okay, well, what am I going to do next? And to be honest, I was literally, sitting just happened to be sitting in my car because I just met with a friend. I just parked the car and I got a phone call out of the blue. The only time in my entire life I've got a phone call from a headhunter. And he's like, oh, do you want to work for Fairfax Media? They're an Australian newspaper company. They bought this enterprise IT magazine in Singapore, and they're having some trouble making it work. And would you be interested in having a look at it? I'm like, well, where's their offices? And they're like, oh, they give me the address. And I'm look out the windshield of my car, and the building's right there. And I'm thinking, this is weird, man. It's like, why is the building right there? So you don't look a gift horse in the mouth, and it sounded interesting, and so I joined them, and I worked for them for about 5-6 years, building up an enterprise IT community. So it was a culmination of what I learned in the stock market and sort of analysis. And then you look at how people do these sorts of sales. And then it was like enterprise IT light. And then, of course, the other thing that was really beneficial for me working in the web design industry is that marketing and sales are not always push. It's really pull. You want to find out what people need, and you want to try to get that out of them. And then you want to try and give them what they want, what they need, the way they want it. So we got into this community building, and I enjoyed it. I found business media pleasurable. I then went from there to Thomson Reuters, managing an Asian legal community. So now I'm dealing with lawyers instead of CIOs. And we're starting to do awards and everything. And that's where I met Florian. So that's the segue to your question. Okay. Florian was with CLS. He was working, in Asia, in Singapore, and then Hong Kong.
CLS is a translation company for those that don't.
Yes. So a Swiss translation company that he was expanding their business in Asia. So he had started with them in Singapore. He'd gone out to the Singapore office, and he was trying to open up different markets, including the legal sector. So he saw what we were doing, and he sponsored some of our events, and he could see that there's an engagement model here. And so we again had news, the sort of Thomson Reuters news model, no fluff, just news you can use, as they say. We did these events where you meet people and you engage them, and that's great for lead generation because it's on a thought leadership basis. And so he was like, hey man, no one's doing this for the language industry. You want to give it a try? And then initially I was skeptical because I'd never heard of the language industry. I was like, what are you talking about? This is the most pervasive industry that nobody's ever heard of.
Exactly.
So it is literally everywhere. So I kind of had to get my head around it for a while. And then, he's like, okay, let's do this. And we decided to do it. And I think he was able to, I came in with the business model, and this is how, you run a news operation, and, initial website design and things like that. He just jumped in and he just applied his domain knowledge, and he did heavy lifting on the editorial side, and then we started selling ads where we could, and then it's grown.
So it started though as you guys started a newsletter. It was a newsletter. It was like Slator. It was just like subscribe to Slator.com.
Yes.
So it was like an online newsletter.
Was it free at start? Sorry, when you started the newsletter,
it's free. It's free.
The email news was just a free newsletter. So it's remarkably similar to Polish Market Review that Kimon founded.
Yes. Well, I talked to Andrew a lot about this as well, because I'm a huge fan of Slator, but like that, we don't need to go completely into that yet. I can talk about how much I like it. I just wonder, sort of technically, you were working, were you and Florian working, or did you guys quit? Like at which point did you, that's always the key moment, right? You had a job, and like you had this idea. I assume you were sort of moonlighting Slator at the beginning.
Florian was, CLS was being acquired by Lionbridge. So he helped hand that off, and then he wanted to be an entrepreneur, and he really jumped straight in. Me, I hedged my bets for a little bit, working a little bit longer. I did a side gig with ACCA, which is an accounting body that helps emerging markets. So I was going around Nepal and Myanmar, helping educational institutes learn accounting and then teaching that so that people could better their lives and earn more money. And then I joined a little bit later. But for those first 2 years, there was very little money coming in. We built from the ground up. We leveraged relationships, running round tables for companies in Asia. And Linebridge was a big early supporter. So the lesson here, I'd say, for using it as a case study for your broad audience, we had to start from scratch. We had to build an audience. So everything was free initially, and you have to make it easy for people to subscribe, and you start to build your audience. And then you have to take the money from where you can. So we were selling banner ads as revenue for whatever we could get, and we were doing events. And you just start chasing every possible dollar you can. And you have to.
But you guys started like
years.
I can tell you, and it's interesting. I'm so curious how this then built, but like as a user, I was a consumer of your media basically, and you guys were way better. No, I mean, there was like nothing there. No, seriously, it was like, I remember it's like you came out of nowhere. It was like, wow, there's all, like if you can imagine, like if you're in a business for many, many years, and then all of a sudden you see this professional, slick, concise, well-written, like newsletter that free, useful and free, coming every day or every once a week. I think it was once a week it still comes once a week into your inbox. So like, obviously that you guys were really, so I mean, I think one lesson is also you and Florian, whatever, it's a good fit. Like you guys were a good fit because he brought, as you said, some initial domain expertise, and you brought like, how do you actually do this like professionally? And then, once it got going, I mean, so what happens? I think relatively quickly, you got to, because I think the base of this type of business is get that free list of, basically potential client base that then you can try to sell stuff to. I mean, how quickly did you get it from 0 to, I don't know, a sizable number of people listening or subscribing to you?
I think if you have the benefit of a lot of capital, you can hire people, you can hire editorial, you can do more marketing, and you can probably accelerate growth curves a little bit to some degree. It was all organic, and so it probably, I'm trying to think when we were like celebrating 3,000 followers on LinkedIn, 4,000 and 5,000. So now we're about ready to hit 25,000. That's crazy. 7 years later, and for an industry like ours, it feels like almost everybody.
But Andrew, I've got a question about the business. You didn't jump in right away, and both you and Florian had professional backgrounds. It wasn't like you were backpacking students coming from nowhere. So did you have a feeling this could be big money? Because you mentioned there wasn't any money. You were sort of scrapping for every client you could find. So on the one hand, you must have had a core belief that we can have a decent income out of this. I'm putting words into your mouth, but quitting a professional job where you get a professional salary to do this as a side project, can you just talk us through your mindset there? Because it's not completely intuitive to me that if I had a professional salary, I would start doing this unless I saw a crock of gold at the end of it.
Well, I think if you will, the big money will come, but that was not the initial target, if you will. To me, it's can I replace this, and can it be more secure, if you will, being my own boss, and can I enjoy the benefits of being my own boss? But I have to confess, in those early stages, Florian was bolder at making that leap, where I hedged my bets a little bit.
Did you put money in? Can you tell us how much you invested, or is that confidential?
We both put in a little bit of money and a lot of sweat, and we didn't take cash out for 2 years or maybe longer. And so there was, an inherent burn. And so me living in Singapore, which was the world's most expensive city at the time, was part of the reason why I kind of hedged a little bit. And then I realized that
wasn't he in China? I think he had an advantage. Or was he in China?
No, he had returned to Switzerland.
Oh, okay.
That's not cheap.
Yeah. So but at the same time, so you're feeling that burn. And for me, like moving to Bangkok with my wife and like getting the cost base down and getting to that. So another thing I would share with people in general, it doesn't matter what business you're in, the sooner you can get to just break even $1 of profit, it takes so much pressure off you. So in those early days, cost low, get your costs as low as possible. That's why a lot of great businesses actually start up in recessions. People almost have no choice. They have to create something to happen. The costs are all down. They hire people at lower salaries. and they just get after something, and mother is the necessity, mother is the invention, necessity is a mother of invention. And so they just get after it. So I would say that Florian did a lot. The positive I say about Florian is he really put his back into it. He really learned editorial and writing, and he really committed to this, and he built an audience, and he still built an audience, and he still has a hunger today for what's happening in the industry. In our industry, it's really, really hard, if you think about it, to know about everything that's happening in every industry vertical, every single player, to kind of do advisory on the technology side. So when you're looking for a business partner, you have to look somebody who's energetic and committed, and again, how the fit works, because there's going to be great times and clashes, and how do we get along and stuff like that. So I would say my role was on the commercial side, the structure side, the product, the side, and then commercially, when I got involved, very, very full time, it was just like, how much can we drive this, and working on the structure together of how to build it. Say then our first research reports, and where do we price them out of? So if you want to talk about the evolution of our model as a case study, it was free. It's a freemium model. You have to build audience, you have to get eyeballs, you have to get attention. Then when you start to offer that 10% that might buy something, you have to get them to make that first purchase. We did low price points, where now we can move the price points up higher, or as opposed to some people come in high.
I remember meeting you years ago. I can't remember which one. I met you a bunch of times, but I remember telling you guys, you got to raise these prices. You got to raise the prices.
Yes.
Of course, I was a consumer, but I was thinking about, from your perspective, your business, like, you need to raise the prices because people will pay. This is better. This is better quality than what's out there.
Yes. But we also have to work on the service model. So, here we are, we created this website, we overcomplicated the product set, which, I'm partly guilty of. We were doing, but there were a couple of other things we really wanted to do. When you really think about it, I hate to say this, but I hated people sending us their press releases. And I was like, PR web gets paid. Why do people want me to work for free? So we took the PR web model and we adopted it, and we actually created it into a voice for small companies in our sector. And that was a need that they didn't have fulfilled before. They put on PR web, it goes into an ocean, nobody cares.
Exactly.
But all of a sudden now it's getting pushed out to people who they know and who they care about. And then it starts to get searched and indexed on Google. So all of a sudden, we were kind of started coming up with these different solutions that were working for people. So I think, we just started to build from the ground up, and now we have a subscription model, and our subscription model is still less than half price the competition, to be honest. And, we continue to try and deliver more value, and we can probably push prices up from here, but, everything at its own time. We had to build a service model now that, makes it workable.
Okay, can you, obviously COVID might distort this a bit, but can you give us, just for our listeners or viewers, a sense of the numbers? Are you in the millions, tens of millions of dollars of revenue, and how much money you're making? Simple private questions like that.
Well, I would say that I can't really talk about numbers, only because I'm sure Florian would kill me.
Okay, no, but maybe orders of magnitude.
It was a couple of years ago. It was probably a year and a half ago, where I'm in Bangkok, and I'm like, okay, the pressure's off, and we're pretty much at replacement salary, and we have upside on dividends, and we're about ready to go at what I would consider to be phase 2 of this company. So we're at 6-7 years. We just launched a new website. Actually, when you look at this, I just want to, if I can blow our own horn a little bit, there are very few media companies or research companies providing digestible, affordable research that you can buy off the back of a credit card, and then also have a subscription model. So we provide a lot of flexibility for people to buy just what they want, instead of trying to shove the all-you-can-eat buffet down their throat. And then we provide these other services as well. And then on top of that, you learn so much that we're now trying to build an advisory service. So we're about ready to go from 14 people to hopefully 40 people, and we're going to go through a whole bunch of growing pains that I should probably defer to Kim on to talk about, because going from 14 to 40 is another challenge, is it not?
Yeah, but let's talk a little bit about your business. Just for, again, I think the listeners, because I know about it, and Richard actually knows quite a bit about it. But basically, so you started with the just so people get a full sense. You started with a free newsletter, and then into that you built out some. Well, first of all, I guess you did some advertising. You allowed people to advertise banners and stuff like that in the newsletter.
Yes.
Then you allow press. You have people paying for press release. But in addition to that, you started doing live conferences, in-person conferences, as well as online conferences during COVID. And then I think a big piece is this, that you said there's research, you guys do research reports that people pay for. And now when you say advisory, I assume you're talking about sort of M&A, like sort of helping with M&A brokerage type stuff. Is that what you mean by advisory? Or I'm not really sure when you say advisory.
It's a mix. So, we have companies ask us for our market views, and we provide briefings to their boards.
Okay.
Sometimes when they're in a situation where they're thinking about expansion, or they might want some custom research, if they're, say, in an acquisition process, sometimes even private equity will
they want to have
about,
somebody do a presentation.
Yeah, well, they also want impression, like what are the price pressures, what are the mechanics, is this really going to grow? They want to make sure that their investment thesis is sound, so they come with us, and they want us to help kick the tires on an investment. And also think about, well, are there any adjacent opportunities where this company can grow geographically or into an adjacent vertical? And so they come to us for advice. And then of course there's M&A advisory, where because we have the language service provider index, because we know so many people through news and research, that it's actually a great familiarity and a trusted familiarity. It makes us a much more natural approach. So we can help match make a lot more thoughtfully. If people bring their investment criteria to us, we can run a long list that we can filter with the client, and we can get very specific on targeting. And so, and we can do the outreach that, it's not a spray and pray. It's just not like, I mean, you're a business owner, Kim. How many times a week do you get an email from somebody saying, "Do you want to sell your business?"
I mean, forget about it.
But I want to ask about relationships, because obviously both you and Florian had a sort of background in face-to-face sales networking with people. And on the other hand, then when you started a newsletter, like you're in Asia, Florian's in Switzerland, and the big players in the industry aren't necessarily in those particular places that you were. So what did you do to actually get to know people? Because now I can imagine you're doing events, you can get to meet people at the events you organize, but how did you develop relationships from your newsletter? Did you call people up when they came from the right companies? And what did you do to migrate them from just a guy whose email you've got to a guy who says, "Oh, wow, great, it's Florian," or "It's Andrew, nice to talk to you"? What did you have systematic phoning up of people and stuff like that?
Phone calls, email, various outreach. Thankfully, because of the good work, that the editorial team and Florian were doing, people like Kimon would see this and go, "Oh, this is actually really interesting," and so people would start to reach out to us. And so it was a mixture of outbound and inbound. You have to start building up your profile. So again, CSA probably had 20-year start. So there were people in the space. They had a 20-year start on you. They had deep databases. You have to start building up your database. You have to start reaching out. You have to start trying to see and I think a lot of companies are smart enough to know if a media company approaches them, and they're not trying to dig up anything or throw dirt. We're the business media. We're the nice guys. We're like, "What's going well? Any lessons we can learn?" So it's they're more receptive to talk. So thankfully, actually, media is if you do it right, and you cover people, and they start to look at how you're managing information, and whether or not you're trading in gossip, and whether you actually verify your things, and you choose what it is, and you have to stick to your ethos as a publisher and say, this is what we're here to do. We're here to help people build their business, right? So we're not here to dig up dirt. We're not here to slam people. We're not here to get involved in commercial disputes. We don't know. We're not lawyers. So let's just see what we can do. What information can we provide to help people? So we had to do a lot of outreach initially. It had to bubble up organically. It took a while. It's been a long, hard road. We had to then finally ratchet up our salaries, which was good. And I would say that, we're on the doorstep now of hopefully a phase 2 that will potentially be transformative because, Florian has young kids.
We got to pay some bill. We got some bills to pay. We need to. This college education's around the corner.
But actually, that also is there's a generic important point here, which is like tailoring the business to suit the life you want to lead. That people talk about a lifestyle business, but it could be if you're a single person living somewhere relatively inexpensive, like say Thailand, you can probably live quite well on $5,000 a month. But if you've got 2 kids and you're living in Zurich, it's not going to work. So you need to tailor your business to meet your personal goals. And what about your situation? Do you have kids you have to feed and stuff like that, or are you just like living in the yachts and private jets and golf clubs?
No, I have 2 daughters. One is still in a junior in high school. The other one started university in the Netherlands, of all places. She went to the IB program. Both kids were in the International Baccalaureate program. So my daughter, through her own self-selection, started looking at European educational opportunities, chose the Dutch, which I fully supported. I think that the Netherlands is great. I think, it's a country that punches way above its weight in terms of trade and innovation. And also a lot of the universities teach in English. So she had actually strangely studied German and is pretty fluent in German. And also a little bit of Mandarin and of course English. So she's studying now in the Netherlands, and
my son's in Groningen. My son's doing exactly the same. He's in Groningen in the north of, which is in the Netherlands, and studying in English. And he was actually in the UK and didn't like it. He said most of the British students were there to party, and he could party without me paying all these high fees. So the Netherlands, it's expensive to live, but the fees are very competitive compared to a lot of countries for international students. So that's I guess you're in the same situation there. You've just got to, I don't know. I don't want to dig too much into your family finances. You need to make a bit of money, but not as much as Florian, right?
Well, yeah, I'd say that, he has probably a little more financial pressure from being in Switzerland, which is why I moved to Bangkok. And it's not really an option for him to say move to, I don't know, Budapest or Prague or Krakow, where the cost of living might be slightly different. But I would say that, you asked about our finances and everything like that. And I think the broader message that I would share with your audience is the sooner you can get to break even or better, the less pressure and stress you will feel. By growing your business, you can constantly ratchet up your salary, but you have to have your salary follow the situation, and then all the other benefits will come. And Kimon, I don't know, how long did it take before you kind of almost felt like you were out of the woods?
No, it took forever. I mean, that's the thing, and it took forever. We have something in common. I'm going to address that in a second, but another thing we have in common, but I think I want to share with people, and it's particularly relevant today because you can work wherever you want. But when I reflect on my life and the money, whatever that I made over the years and stuff like that, living in Poland was a massive competitive advantage for me. And I have to believe, okay, when you were in Singapore, maybe that was not the case, but when you realize that you went to Bangkok, it has to be the case that all of a sudden, we make whatever X, like everybody makes X, but our X is worth a lot more because we get to keep a lot more of it. If I make the same as some other guy, I'll just say a funny thing. I remember meeting a guy. I was traveling in business class. I was in and a guy same size, let's say, company as mine at the time. And I always traveled in business class. And he was there for the first time. He was asking me, how do you do this? What's this? Like, what's this? What's the other thing? Because he'd been living in a high cost country. And so even though it's the exact same thing, he just wasn't taking home. He wasn't just making as much, the same amount of money. It's a stupid example, but it really does show that over time, this compounds. And back to your question about like me in Poland, like living here, I did a slog. Andrew, you would never have done it, I don't think, because all my American friends were like, like, what are you doing? Like, they were all making like 6 figures and like we're the New York guys. And I was just like, and I want to say it was a good 10 years or maybe 15 until like just slogging away, and multiple businesses, but just slogging away and not really doing anything, basically not making anything, but surviving, like, but really I started to make some headway after, let's say 10 or 15 years. So it takes, I mean,
but three is, in my case, I was lucky that I had probably 3 or 4 in Krakow, but I started like I think about 3 years before Kimon, but I was lucky that I actually had quit a well-paid job in the UK, and the company I used to work for carried on paying me as a freelancer for about 2 months after I quit on a day rate, which earned me more than my previous year's salary because they were desperate. They needed a consultant in Poland. And so I had that kind of cushion. But being able to move to a low-cost country and having enough money to mean you don't have to take money out of your business for a year or two can be a very, very good way to kick off a business. It just takes the pressure off it.
Yeah.
Moving, and Krakow's not as cheap as it was, but moving to a low-cost country while you're getting things
actually,
going.
thanks, Richard. You actually drew attention to what I want. Like, I think the result of that was I was pouring everything back into the business. I didn't say that, but actually, you actually, I think I was pouring everything back in the business. That meant I was just because I required less. I had more that I could pour back, and obviously that paid dividends, down the line. That so
yeah. So I'm just wondering where we go from here, or I sort of feel that. I feel that I want. I know what I want to ask you.
Let me throw something out here, which again, it meant to be beneficial for your audience, right? So if you're a young person today, you're either going to college or you're not going to go to college. There are lots of jobs out there that you don't need to go to college for, and you can make a lot of money. I mean, there are a lot of people doing programming, on game creation, and all kinds of things, content creation. So no matter which one you choose, they can lead. If you want to travel or if you want to see the world, there's a couple of different ways to do it. I think the more traditional route is probably you're within a company, you have to work for a couple of years, and maybe something will open up in an overseas market, and you have to decide whether or not you want to take that or not. And you get your first overseas posting. So you can transfer within companies. And that usually comes as you start to produce. So if people see you as somebody who's doing well, contributing, taking on more roles, they'll send you out into a less desirable market that the more established players may not want to go to. And that's your opportunity. You take it, and you do it for a couple of years, and you just don't know what unforeseen benefits might come your way from the people you meet, from what you learn. And quite frankly, you come out to Southeast Asia, and some of these markets are cowboy towns, and you learn how business is done. And then you go back to squeaky clean Singapore, and you see a different way, and you think, what's the pros and the cons? So that said, I think there's a couple of different ways to travel and see the world if that's what you like to do. And I think the language industry also is quite exceptional in that regard. There's a lot of, it's just very international by nature. And so, you can do it through school, you can do it through trade, you can do it through your own business. And there's nothing stopping you, as both of you have shown. You can get up and get on a plane and go do it.
And I want to ask about, you referred back to your time at Maersk and managing people as you're sort of facing the sort of scaling from 7 people and even employing 7 or 8 people. That's still like a huge difference from just working by yourself. But in terms of the stuff that you and Florian think are important in terms of how to manage people, attract them, make sure that they're happy to stick, because it's tough being a small company, getting people to come and work for you, because like none of your friends have heard of Slator, and I'm putting you in the position of an employee. It's not, you may be famous in the industry, but it's not that easy for a small company to get really smart people to come and join you. So and which means the way you manage people is ultra important. So if you're going to share what you think's important in terms of being an employer who gets the best out of people, makes them work really hard, and they're happy, what do you do?
That's a lot of responsibility there. I think when you're looking as a young company, you have to look for people with a great attitude. There are people out there who kind of want to do something, but they also are somewhat flexible and adaptable. and are team players and are willing to kind of go beyond their typical job description, and they may even view those as opportunities. They're also looking, I would say, if you're looking to expand your own personal development, do look to small companies, because they'll give you more responsibility across more areas than any large company. It's kind of like Merce Data. Here's your box. Here's your box. Okay, now you're a technician, so your technician's path is this. So you have to look for people who want a little bit of freedom, a little bit of, you have to make some trades, and I think us being and working remotely, we were ahead before COVID of, 9 to 5, you got to be in the office. Why aren't you at your desk at 9 a.m.? And we had to move towards a deliverables framework. So, when is that report due? Are we getting enough articles out a day? And then, using productivity tools. So, Florian spotted Asana, and we use Asana for our editorial workflows and other project management and other workflows. So you have to build workflows that work for people, communications that work for people. Then it becomes your communication style, and and everyone's under stress. So you have to remember that other people might be under stress too. And you just try to nurture it and bring it along. And then of course, everyone wants to earn a living, and everyone wants to be happy. So it's how do you treat people at work, and do you treat them with dignity, and you treat them the same way you want to be treated. And then if something's not working out, then you can have conversations. But it's really upon you as a leader, if you will, to try and convey what you need or what you expect. When you expect it, you have to help people with the tools, and then hopefully they bring in some knowledge, and they bring in some energy, and they bring in some adaptability. And then, you're working together in this much more fluid situation. And then you have to celebrate some wins. You have to pat people on the back. You have to, the one thing that's good about the events business is you can try and gather the team in different locations and say, oh, let's all meet here.
Yeah, you get you get the social aspect and the integration.
Yes.
Stuff.
Yes. So it's not easy, but thankfully we've been very, very fortunate. And there were people that reached out to us. Esther, our research director, reached out to us. She knew people, she knew Anna, who's on our research team now. So next thing you know, word of mouth starts to bubble up, and they're like, oh, these guys are all right,
Yeah.
Maybe
And as you treat, and that's back to what I was saying, that bank of goodwill, as you treat people well, then they'll be more inclined to do stuff for you, which is like make referrals and find other good people. Like, I like working here. These guys are cool. Cool. Richard, any final comments before?
I was just thinking, you're talking about taking the company to the next level, and suppose it works out and you go up to like 40 people, and financially it's working, and Florian can pay his school fees and all, that kind of stuff. Do you see yourself? And you look to me as if you're in your 40s or 50s. Would I be right in getting your age right?
I am in my mid 50s. Yes.
Okay. So, are you going to sell the business? I mean, you're consulting on M&A, but would you become part of some big media events business, or would this be something you'd carry on, hire someone to run it and be an owner forever? Do you have a capital market strategy for your ownership down the line?
Well, I think the positive is we're entering a phase where there's a good cash flow coming out of the business. It's not exactly silly money or anything like that, but there's some comfort. There's something to build from here, and so on a personal basis, even if we were to sell the business or something were to go wrong or the business were to close, I enjoy engaging with people. So I'd probably keep working in some capacity anyway. And even in this business, mainly, if this does really well, we want to get really capable managers in, and then do I really want to work like I am now, 50, 60 hours a week, into my 60s, 70s? And the answer is not really. But that said, if somebody were to come along and say, you got a great business and we want to pay you, X, a premium for 5 years into the future or something, you take a look at it and you either say yes or no. So are we actively trying to shop the business around? No. Do we have an exit plan? No. But, I think what's more interesting is once you have a platform for a business, other opportunities start to present themselves.
Yes.
So there may be other people who are involved in the business and they're asking for your advisory, and the next thing maybe you're a non-executive director on a board of a company. Maybe you're starting to invest in another company.
Exactly.
Maybe something else. So the world starts to open up for you. So again, we're at this moment where who knows what the future will bring.
Yeah, but look, I strongly believe that like I think, and if you're in the M&A side of it, a lot of people are they're what we call putting lipstick on the pig when they're getting ready to sell it. And actually, the truth is, just try to build the best business that you can every single day. And you, as you're saying, I mean, you're particularly in a nice spot with this media. You have lots of exposure, but like opportunities will happen. That's what I would say is don't like, it's nice to have, call them dreams, these exit plans, but like dreams will take care of themselves if you're creating value and you're building something good.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly like one opportunity leads to another. I'm just reminded that, you know, my business, the Barcode Systems company, the fact I was running that led me to meet Kimon, and the business I've done with Kimon has been way more successful than the Barcode business. Barcode business is still exists, but and then there's another business I spun out of the Barcode business that actually makes more money than, it's not bigger, but it makes more money than the Barcode business. So you do one thing and it can lead you into other opportunities. And so
basically, the Barcode business is just like an
incubator.
It's not really a real company. It's just a segue into other things.
No, barcodes are everywhere. anyway, I think, is there anything we haven't asked you or you'd like to share just before we wrap? Because I think it sounds like you've shared a really interesting journey. You're in a good place and it's going to get even better. But is there anything else that we haven't, you'd like to share with our audience?
Three quick things. First, thank you for the opportunity. And I think Kimon and Argos are a company to watch in our space. So in terms of entrepreneurship, again, a lot to learn from that man and how he's built a business and the long haul that he's done. The second thing is, I remember when I was getting in my undergraduate graduation, and Malcolm Forbes gave the speech, and he walked in with this kilt after he'd been on his holiday with Elizabeth Taylor in Morocco, and gave a 40-minute comedy session. And then he said, do what you like to do, because you'll want to do it, you'll do it well, and the money will come. And I kept thinking, I just paid what for 4 years? I've had that guy say, do what you want to do. But sadly, he was true. He was a little bit correct. I think if you can kind of understand who you are and what you like, when the world throws you curveballs, you can try to adapt. You can make your own way. And then if something goes wrong, you can try and reposition. And I think we shared a lot of these stories today. But at the end of the day, we finally gotten to a point where I've taken all of these collective lessons. I've been very fortunate to have a good business partner. We have a business model that's working. The marketplace has accepted it, which is not always the case, and so we're in a good place right now. So the last thing I would want to say is just enjoy it, because I'm working far more hours now than I would ever work in a corporate, if I were ever to return to the corporate world. And I enjoy it. And I enjoy dealing with the people and the customers. And I just feel very, very happy when they share their stories with me. So I get a lot of personal benefit. So do what makes you happy as well as what makes you rich. And you can find a way to try to marry the two.
Yeah, those are great. That's great advice. And I couldn't echo that more. You don't want to be, it's not worth any money in the world to be doing stuff you don't like. That's like a death sentence. Let's be honest, like working in a job. So like, and unfortunately, a lot of people make financial decisions. Obviously it's a luxury for us to sit here, sort of like call us these westernized, whatever, upper middle class people, whatever you want to call us, these people that can just sit here and say, yeah, we like, we're not in a starving, like very difficult economic situation, because some people just have to take the best job that they can get. But I mean, if you get to sort of this situation, I mean, I think you do definitely need to be thinking about time and how you want to spend it, because as we don't have an unlimited amount of time. So I think how we spend it's really important. Anyway, Andrew, I love Slator. I'm a huge fan. I love watching it. I love watching it grow. And I'm absolutely sure that you and Florian together are a great team to make this thing, to take it, as you said, to the next stage and probably the phase after that. So thanks so much. I found that the whole story, I've met you a bunch of times, but I learned a ton about you that I didn't know. And I thought it was really interesting. And I thought the lessons were great. So thanks so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. And we're just getting started, so I'll see you at the next SlatorCon.
Yeah, we're back to live. I just saw you. This all happened because I saw Andrew again for the first time in several years in San Diego. So that was that. So anyway, yeah, and thanks. So, and just sort of a brief thank you to everybody who makes this podcast possible. We have a bunch of technical people behind the scenes that work magic to make the sound and the video look good. And then we have people at the MBN to put it up there. So if you like it, please subscribe, like, follow us on the MBN or wherever you get your podcasts. And that's it. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Kimon.
Bye-bye.